Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Lara May, a clinical pharmacist specializing in functional medicine, as well as a certified yoga teacher and Reiki master. I run a truly integrative health coaching practice, encompassing functional medicine lab testing, yoga and meditation, and a sprinkling of Reiki energy medicine. Join me here on Light Body Radio to break through your health plateau and come into alignment with your natural vitality. Hello and welcome to Light Body Radio. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, and today I have with me Ian Clark. Ian was bankrupt at 46 and given 1,000 days left to live at the same time. And 5 years later, he survived and built a raw supplement business direct to consumer in his basement, which reached hundreds of thousands of people in only 2 years. So I'm excited to have Ian here today. We're going to talk about iodine and micronutrients, and I'm sure lots of fantastic and exciting things. So I will go ahead and let him come on and start telling his story. Hi, Ian. Welcome.
Hey, Dr. Lara. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Tell us about, I always like to hear the story, directly from my clients. So let's start there.
Yeah, well, I had a very interesting journey over the last 19 years. So I just turned 65 years old in June of this year. And my health is now better than it was when I was 25 years old in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 46 years old, I had no knowledge about how to support my body's ability to be healthy. And I didn't realize that I didn't have that knowledge. I was doing what everybody else was doing around me. And I ended up with a very serious set of problems with my health, which was one was a tumor that was growing in the bottom of my abdomen. I had a lot of symptoms of heart disease, and my liver numbers were very, very bad. And it showed up in a series of months. So the medical doctors in Toronto and the specialists who I was seeing, they recommended surgery. They recommended all kinds of different things that I didn't like. And the problem with that was that when I was 20 years old, which was only 26 years before that, 1978, both of my uncles on my mom's side of the family died of cancer. They died 2 days apart, and they were 51 and 54 years old. And the thing that I didn't like is they had followed everything the doctor told them at the time, and each one of them died exactly on time, according to what the prognosis was, and they took all the treatments from the medical institutions, and I thought that just didn't make sense, and I didn't want to have that kind of thing happen to me. So I thought, in 2004 there have to be much better understandings of how to deal with health problems, but it seemed to be very similar. This was in 78. I spoke to my oldest brother about this on a few occasions. He was a medical doctor for 30 years in North Bay. He wasn't my doctor, but I would call him up, and he told me that it was genetic predisposition, that I looked like one of my uncles, and I looked like Uncle Don, and you just got to do what the doctors are telling you, because it had nothing to do with me per se. It was nothing that I was doing. It was my genetics, and that didn't help. I was like, that's a very useless thing to tell me, because
Right.
if it's genetic,
Yeah.
and there's nothing I can do. So I told him, and I told everyone at that time, I said, I think the problem is me. And it's probably what I'm doing. I don't know. Maybe what has happened in my life, what I've done, I don't know. But I think it's me. And it turned out to be that was the case. And I had no clue. And I realized they had no clue. They only knew how to cut and try to fix the way that the medical world does. And I woke up one morning and I realized that there have to be people on this earth who have great knowledge when it comes to living naturally and how to support the body to get well. But I didn't know who they were, where they were, how to find them. And it's a pretty big world out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I just had this thing, this sort of this gut instinct. Of course they exist. And that gave me some hope. And I just thought I would love it if I could be led to people who have the truth about how this works. And I would do whatever it took. If I could be led to people who have the knowledge, I would then do whatever it takes. If I had to suffer a lot, fine. If I had to, if I had to have a lot of fun, fine. I had no money because we were bankrupt, but I knew that one way or another, it would work out. And it did. It just was very slow. Just slowly but surely, I started to meet enough people within that 36-month window to extend that out to about 60 months, because my body was in terrible condition. I ended up losing about 90 pounds off my frame during that time when I started to learn about cleaning my diet up and various different things. But it was a bit radical and extreme things that I did, which I would not do now. I wouldn't go back and redo what I did to get well. It was very difficult. With the knowledge I have now, 19, almost 20 years later, I would go back and tell myself many different things that would take maybe 6 months to a year maximum. It took 7 years at that time, from 2004 to 2011, to get rid of the tumor. And my body just slowly dissolved it out of my body.
Mm-hmm.
Because of cleaning it up and detoxing. The heart disease symptoms went away in about 5 years. The liver took about 5.5 years until those numbers were good. And and then once I was in a state of health that I felt was safe, then I was like, okay, I've got some breathing room. Then I thought, well, there must be many, many wonderful things that we can do to have extremely good health. And that's where the journey has led me now today, to be on this call with you and share some information.
So tell us about the products that you make in your company, and
it was really an interesting, a whole bunch of synchronicities, which I didn't really understand what a synchronicity was. I knew there were some very strange patterns that I would see once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got into the health space, a lot of them would show up all the time. And one of the first things that happened is I found out about it's a nutritional molecule, and it comes from marine phytoplankton, which grows in the ocean. And there was a 40-year study in the south of Spain where they were determining what are the usefulnesses of these different strains of marine phytoplankton in the ocean. And they found there were 2 strains that were perfect for the human nutritional profile and also for animals. And then it took another, many years to develop a protocol to grow it on land, because you can't harvest it out of the ocean. You can extract it out of the ocean for research. And once they had isolated these 2 heirloom strains, this young couple who were going to that university where the study was done had some substantial wealth in their family, and they were able to put together this facility, a photobioreactor, and they were growing this marine phytoplankton, these 2 strains, on land. And I found out about that, and I purchased some. It was in a powder form, and it seemed to make me feel like my battery was charged up to begin with. So I thought it was very good. And then a gentleman out of California got a hold of me and said, hey, you've got this marine phytoplankton thing, because I put a little bit of this on a website. It was called The Best Food Ever, just to let people know, because I thought it was important to let people know. And he said, you can put that into this concentrated sea mineral liquid, and it will stabilize it, because the shelf life on the marine phytoplankton was only 2 years. And he said, you can stabilize it. He said, I know this guy, and I can put you in touch. And so I ended up meeting a person out of Australia who had concentrated sea minerals in a liquid form. And long story short, I was able to get a hold of that raw material, and it had to be shipped to Europe, where they were growing the marine phytoplankton. And we did a test where we were able to stabilize it, the fresh marine phytoplankton, without turning it into powder, in this sea mineral liquid. And when I did that, it amplified the product significantly, because now you have a freshly harvested marine phytoplankton that is a living plant material, and it will replicate. So vegans and vegetarians are happy with this plant material, but they're actually living, replicating continuously. So, but they're not considered an animal, but they have a high level of intelligence. And consuming that was a phenomenal thing. And when I shared that with people in Canada at that time, they kind of turned their nose up at it for, I don't know why. I was at a farmer's market and people didn't really like it very much. And I took it down to California to Expo West in Anaheim, and then to another event afterwards. And people immediately loved it. And it was strong. It tastes like the ocean. And I called it Oceans Alive. And that's what founded the company, because they just started ordering product from Canada, and we made it and we set up a clean room in the basement of our house because we didn't have any company or facility or licensing or anything. And I didn't know what else I could do. They would order 1,000 bottles at a time. So we went and purchased the pipettes and the little dropper bottles, and we're filling them and putting labels on from our computer printer and shipping them down through Canada Post. And it was just one order after the next, and ended up selling a very substantial amount of that in the first 24 months while my body was going through this healing process. And that was what started it. Now, the ocean, I had no idea how important the sea minerals were at that time. All I knew is they just made everyone feel like their battery was getting charged up in their body when they would use it. And they would be able to get away from stimulants like coffee. They wouldn't need all that stuff anymore. And that founded the company. So we took it very seriously, and we ended up getting a small facility to start with, and then we kept reinvesting the money back in. We never took any of the money for ourselves other than just to live on. And we just kept putting the money in, and we've generated around $90 million of revenue since then. That was then reinvested back into research, learning of the educational side of everything, what is really going on with the human body. And we have this factory. It's a 70,000 square foot facility in Cobourg, Ontario, and we ship it to 4 different parts of the world now. One is the UK, Canada, US, and Australia. And we just focused on simplifying the information and getting clarity around what the body really needs to function at its highest level, and what are the elements that are missing for most people from their diets. And so now we have this ability to produce a very large amount of product for people. It took all these years. Now, literally in 2023, we're ready to begin to serve a lot more people with information, education, and the raw materials that they need to consume.
That's so exciting. So is there sort of a blueprint that you've uncovered through all this time, work, and energy you've put towards this, both through your own healing and your company?
Yes. Yeah. And the blueprint looks clear and simple. The one thing that was really disturbing for me was when I started to do analytics on the numbers, on what's really going on in the world we live in. And I noticed that the length of life, expected lifespan in North America particularly, is 74 years old average. So some people die in their 50s, other people live till 100. Very few live till 100, but some people do. And then you go to the health conscious community, people who are really, they're mindful, they're considerate, they love themselves, they speak well of others, they are, they meditate, they exercise, they eat clean, they stay away from toxic materials, and they have a much higher quality of life. But they only have an average lifespan of 81. And some of the health conscious people die in their 50s, and some make it till 100. And I thought, well, that's only a 7-year difference. Then I looked at the blue zones, and the blue zones are an average lifespan of 83 years old. And it just boggled my mind. I go, what is wrong with this picture? If you have a healthy body, it can't die unless you have an accident. And the chances of having an accident are very low. I think there's only 5% of the whole world who has died of an accident. So most people are going to live and they're going to die of something else. And I thought, why are the people who are health knowledgeable dying at this very little bit later, like 7 years extra? And which is okay, but it's not okay. That we are definitely missing some information here. And I was now becoming what was considered a health expert, and then people were treating me like a guru at one point, and then some people were calling me a sage, and I'm like, guys, I don't think so. No, I don't. I think there's something really wrong. I don't know, and the experts don't know. We're missing something because we shouldn't be dying like that. If the body's healthy, it should continue to live. And I'm not talking about never dying. I'm talking about having a level of health. I said, something is killing us, but I don't know what it is. Because if I did, then none of us would be having this problem, because people are getting all kinds of problems. Like there's 1,000 different things that can happen to you that will take you out. And so I with that knowledge that I didn't know, and that you don't know, and we don't know, and that person doesn't know, I then realized, well, their knowledge is there somewhere. I would love to have that knowledge. That would be interesting. And so I just let that settle. And in 2017, something showed up. It was on November the 1st, 2017. It was a small bit of information that indicated to me that I was now being put in touch with things that really made the difference. And then in 2022, a second key showed up. I call them keys because if you're locked from being able to do something, you need a key to unlock that dimension. That it's not I'm not talking about going to other dimensions. I'm talking about the dimensions in your life that you live in. You have your mental health, your emotional health, your physical, your environmental health, your domestic health, your financial health. There's all these different categories that we live in, these dimensions of reality. And I just knew that if we could find those keys. And so the second key showed up in 2022. And when I used that, then that taught me so many things in the last 1 year. It was like the culmination of all the things coming together. The little bit of info I got in 2017, the little bit of info in 2022 opened up doors that I couldn't even imagine could happen. And my whole body went through a complete transformation, starting in 2017 structurally, and then biologically in the last 1 year. And it took me, I first started learning about it in April of 2022. And I started to do these things around October of 2022. So now that made me stand back again and do further analytics. I thought, okay, why is this working? What is going on? Why is there such a massive change physically that I can visibly see and is totally measurable? And I thought, okay, what does the human body do more than anything? Because there's certain things we do. Everybody's very, everybody already knows: eat clean, get a good broad spectrum of nutrition, get good rest, make sure you're hydrating. They have all these things that people talk about and do, but it's not working. It's really good, but it doesn't open the lock. So what you do as a human, and what I do as an adult human, is we breathe 11,000 liters of air per day. That means that you breathe, in 1 year, you breathe 4 million liters of air in a year. That's a lot of air. And that's a non-negotiable. Your body automatically breathes when you're sleeping, when you're awake, right? And people do breath exercises. That's all wonderful, but that doesn't do it. It's good. Breath exercises are wonderful. But you're breathing all this air. And then if you look at a 20-year-old person and you measure them, they have 100% kidney function, so-called. That's what they like, really good functioning kidneys. And you take an average 60-year-old and their kidneys are considered good when they're running at about 35% compared to 20, but that's called good for a 60-year-old. That's expected. It's 35% of the functionality of a 20-year-old. And I go, what is normal about that? What's the difference between a 20-year-old and a 60-year-old? Well, 40 years of breathing air, right? So when you're doing 4 million liters a year, that's 160 million liters of air more than a 20-year-old. So what is with the air? Well, in the air, there are things called nanoparticulates, and they cannot be seen. It takes a microscope to see a micron. A nano is 1,000 times smaller than a micron, and there is real physical material, and it's coming from the age we live in, which is a very unsophisticated age as far as I'm concerned. You know, we think we're the most modern civilization. Well, I think we need to think again.
Yeah.
Because, right? You
We're
know,
so smart, then why are we doing so many of the things that we're doing? And
right.
not.
Right. And not knowing how to deal with it. So what's in the air is this. This is simple. In the United States alone, there is around 10 billion pounds of rubber dust released from tires that wear out, from the hundreds of millions of vehicles and the hundreds of millions of tires, 18 in every truck, 4 in every car. And based on the sales of tires per year, they did a calculation, and they found out that there's that much dust released. And whereas it is not on the road, you don't see any rubber piling up on the road at all. It's wearing out in a nanoparticulate manner at 70 miles an hour on the highways, for example. And the motion of the traffic makes it go up 1.5 miles. They've done air samples and take it back to the lab. And up to 1.5 miles above the highway, you're still finding rubber dust. And the other thing is brake dust. Now, tires are made of rubber, cotton, epoxies, resins, plastics, chemicals, and metals. And they're coming off in this nanoparticulate that floats in the air. It goes to the top of mountains, to the bottom of lakes. It goes over every field of food that we're consuming from. It goes everywhere. And particularly, you're breathing it. When you breathe it constantly like that, it goes inside your house. You can't filter it out. The particles are too small. And you begin to accumulate this particulate matter in your body, which begins to plug you up. And your lungs, when I looked at the mathematical numbers on the lungs, I found out that there are 100 square miles of surface area in your lungs. And that instantly transfers the oxygen and the things from the air we need into our bloodstream, along with all this other pollutant stuff. And I've only mentioned 2 things, rubber dust and brake dust. There's more than 1,000 items in the air. Yeah. From fuel, from industrial manufacturing, and on it goes. And so your blood system is what carries that the nutrients from the air and the garbage from the air to every cell in your body. You pump 7,600 liters of blood a day, but your body only has 5 liters. And if people aren't familiar with liters, a liter is a quart, saying approximately a quart. So you're pumping your entire blood in your body is pumped through your whole body every minute of every day. You have 86,500 heartbeats. You have 10,000 kilometers or 6,500 miles of arteries, veins, and capillaries that your blood is pumping through. If your heart stops right now, you have 8 seconds on the clock until you're blacked out. You're on the ground, you're out. 8 seconds. And if nobody finds you within 8 minutes and doesn't resuscitate you, you are dead. And then you're not going to have your heart stopping. It's going to continue to pump now. Right now, you're a living being. You're healthy and you're alive. And you've got to deal with the fact that your body is plugging up because your liver and your kidneys cannot keep up with the pace of that much stuff coming in. And hence, that's why people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s get very sick and die. Mm-hmm. No matter how much they watch the food they eat, and no matter any of those things, they die. And so I thought, well, what is the solution? Well, then I found out that the body, your body and my body and all of our bodies, are blood production facilities. our bodies have the ability to produce clean blood. But I never thought about that before. And if you don't have the raw material, physical raw material, that your body needs to produce blood, then your blood system keeps filling up from what you're breathing. Your liver gets plugged up, your kidneys get plugged up, and it causes all kinds of other symptoms like heart disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, cancers, whatever, because the body keeps falling further and further behind and it can't keep up with the toxicity levels. And normal detoxing doesn't work. If normal detoxing worked, then everybody would stay healthy and keep living. The only way that we can fix the problem is to every single day consume the raw materials that our body needs to produce blood. And that happens to come from the ocean. And why is it in the ocean? Because those minerals that come from unrefined sea minerals, which are biocompatible and bioidentical to our bodies, is the exact raw material we need. And that's what started our company. We started producing and selling to people 17 years ago with this, and I didn't even know that was the raw material. People drink mineralized water, but those minerals don't work because the minerals from rocks that are dissolved from a mountain stream, that doesn't provide the raw material to produce clean blood. You have to have a volume of sea mineral liquid that is mixed with pure water that you drink, changing the water into electrolytic fluid. And then I looked at all the misinformation that we're fed from the time we're in school until we're adults, and we're told things like our body is 60 to 80% water. They change those numbers at different times, but no, you're not. You're 60 to 80% electrolytic fluid. It's not water. Water is H2O. If you cry a tear, that doesn't taste like water. That tastes like seawater. If you taste sweat, it's like seawater. You're a literal walking ocean.
Mm-hmm.
But there has been billions of dollars spent by the institutions of this world to convince you that salt is bad for you. And they take salt and they refine it and they put all this stuff in it and they put it on your table and they mix it in packaged foods, and industry uses salt for all kinds of things. And all that salt is extremely harmful because it's been refined and damaged, and it's not good for the body. The body can't use that to produce clean blood. It has to be unrefined sea minerals that are melted into water. But we're told, oh no, the older you get, that salt will kill you. You've got to have a low sodium diet. If you have lots of salt, it'll cause heart attacks and strokes and aneurysms and all kinds of problems. It'll dehydrate you if you have too much salt. And that's the propaganda that was told internationally. And so then what happens is, because we're told that, and no one ever told us that we need a good volume of these sea minerals starting around 20 years old, or starting at whatever age you're at, so long as you're not over the threshold. Some people have gone over a threshold. Their body is so broken down that it just can't fix itself anymore. But if you're still good, like you and me, or like I was at 46, or at 64, when I found out the exact way to do this, the body begins to regenerate itself rapidly, because the clean blood is produced 24 hours a day, and then you're in good shape. But me at 64 years old, here's a perfect example. I did all the stuff I was told to do. I was very disciplined. I have my routine. I do everything, just on time, but I wasn't doing enough sea minerals. Once I amped up the sea minerals, my body reacted a lot. And it had symptoms that if I went to a doctor, my doctor would freak out. I don't go to the doctor. I don't need to go to a doctor. I appreciate the medical institutions a lot. I appreciate the naturopaths a lot, because they help people who have a limited amount of knowledge to get a remedy for a problem, and at least it keeps them alive, or it gives them a better quality of life. But they tell you, hey, your blood pressure is going to go up if you have too much salt. You just have too much salt in general. You got to reduce your salt intake. You got to drink as much pure, clean water as you can, because we have all these studies that show that people in their 60s, if they use less salt and drink more water, that they have a longer life. Well, that's another whole bunch of misinformation, because the body is already compromised by then, and it's got hardened arteries. It has kidneys that are plugged up. Kidneys cannot work well when a person is compromised. And so I started drinking 5 grams of sea minerals in every liter of water, and 1 liter of the water that I consumed, it was turned into electrolytic fluid. 1 liter of this electrolytic fluid that I make every day, 1 liter for every 50 pounds of body weight. Now, people think, are you crazy? That's dangerous. You're going to cause all kinds of problems. You're going to have high blood pressure. Well, my blood pressure was at 115/65 for the 10 years leading up to 2022. And I was pretty proud of that blood pressure number. I'm like an athlete, That's
Considered
not bad.
good in the medical realm, yeah.
It's okay, right? Well, I got a blood pressure monitor, and I started to consume the sea minerals in the fluid. And slowly my blood pressure started to increase. And within a month, it went to 180/120. Now, that would be considered very high, right?
Yeah, that would be considered in need of medication.
Right.
From a pharmacist's perspective.
That's right. Now, so I should have been very worried and very concerned according to the institutional thinking. But I knew that all that was happening is that my body was now producing more blood. And so I had a higher volume of blood in my body, about 5.5 liters instead of 5 liters. And my body's producing clean blood. And that this would fix the problem, that I had to go through this because my arteries, my veins, and my capillaries were hardened. Because otherwise my blood pressure would not have gone up.
Right.
Around the same time I'm doing this and going through this whole process, I had a person who I met who was 19, and she was working on the social media side, and I told her about this, and she said, "Oh, that's interesting. It sounds like it actually makes sense." And I said, "Well, you start drinking the salt water." So she started drinking the same amount of salt water per 50 pounds of body weight. She's 100 pounds, and she was drinking 2 liters a day. And I was drinking 3 liters a day. And her blood pressure never moved at all in the first 3 months. My blood pressure went to 180/120, like I said, and it stayed there for 4 months, but hers didn't go up at all. I said, "Well, what's the difference between me and her?" Well, I was 64, she's 19. I had breathed 170 liters of air more than she did. That was the only difference. She didn't have hardened arteries at all because the nanoparticulate that I breathed in had gone into the muscle walls of my arteries, veins, and capillaries, making them stiff. And that clean blood that I was producing continuously every day began to clean out the muscle walls of my arteries, veins, and capillaries. And within 7 months, my blood pressure had gone back to normal levels in 7 months. And I'm still drinking the same amount of salt and dissolved into my water, and sea minerals dissolved in into my water. And the salt has to come from the ocean. It has to be unrefined. And now I'm in a body that has normal blood pressure. I drink the unrefined sea minerals every single day in all the fluid that I drink, and my blood pressure is normal. So the mythology that taking in large amounts of salt is going to cause a problem is not true, because it actually fixed the problem. So a young person's not going to have any symptoms at all, but an older person's going to have these symptoms. But you just have to go through it. I realize every minute of every day that I'm pumping all the blood of my body through my entire body, and I'm producing clean blood, that blood's cleaning it out. And you should have seen the stuff that, my body cleaned out so much in the first 3 months alone. I had liquid bowel movements the whole time. The stuff that came out of me was just astronomically a lot. And it was all this nanoparticulate that was dissolving out of my system. And I started to feel better and better. At around 7 months into this, when my blood pressure was now normal, my lungs started to cough out stuff, a lot of it. And I spent an entire month, and people thought I was sick, right? And I didn't. I had no fever. no infection, and I was coughing up this white glue. Is all I could do. That's what it was. It was like this glue, had no flavor. It was white. And every 30 minutes of my waking day, I would have to hack the stuff out of my bronchioles. It would get stuck on my larynx, and I would cough it out of my body, and it would go away. And then it stopped after a month. And my lungs felt like I had twice the capacity of my lungs. And so that was an interesting thing. And then about another month after I stopped coughing all the stuff out, it started again. And I coughed another month of stuff out of my body. And then since then, that hasn't happened. I was like, what was that? And my lungs are so healthy right now and so clean. My entire digestive system got totally cleaned out because the same raw materials that my body uses to produce clean blood is the same raw materials my body uses to produce hydrochloric acid in my stomach. People always have gut issues as they get older. You know, it could be, you know, whatever, you name it. There's a 15 different things that can happen all the way up to Crohn's disease and bowel cancer and on it goes. So with this really powerful hydrochloric acid that my body can produce now, because it gets the raw material it needs to do so, I can digest anything. I can eat as much proteins and fats as I want. I don't use any digestive enzymes. No probiotics are needed. I have a super squeaky clean digestive tract. And like I said, everything works functionally beautifully. I have 2 to 3 bowel movements a day. I'm back to normal bowel movements now. And and I'm 65 with normal blood pressure, a perfect digestive system. My cardiovascular system is supple and elastic, like a young person again. All the hardened arteries are gone. All the hardened veins are gone and capillaries. Everything is functioning at a really high level because I found out the massive key at the base of your health and my health is to give your body every single day, all day long, through liquid, the C minerals, and we produce clean blood. And now I've reversed the entire lifetime of all breathing all that excess stuff. It's now gone. So now what I breathe today, the rubber dust and the brake dust, and there's another one that I found out about, which I was horrified what we're breathing, and that is the cremation of all the human bodies that die and all the animals that are killed in the highway, which is like 1 million a day apparently. And there's 164,000 people who die every day. 85% of the bodies are cremated and 15% are buried in the earth. The ones that are buried in the earth, that goes into the water table, which is bad. But the ones that are cremated, look up on Google Maps, crematoriums and funeral homes. They're in the neighborhoods of everywhere we live. And the smokestacks where the incinerator releases the gases is in the neighborhood. The ashes don't come out. The body turns into ash visibly, but all that nanoparticulate accumulation of the bodies that died, they died from that, is now released into the air we're breathing. And so we're walking around breathing these cremated bodies, all the nanoparticulate that's released from that. So we're amplifying it. And it's like, great. That's another huge contamination factor. Now, if you go to Colorado and Oregon, there's only 2 states in the entire United States that somebody wisely passed a law that allows the composting of the bodies. So you could take an animal's body or a human's body, you put it into a tube, you know, the fresh, and this is morbid stuff, but the fresh dead body has just died. It's full of bacteria, full of all these toxins, full of chemotherapy if they died of cancer, full of whatever, pharmaceutical drugs. You put it into the tube with compost material below it and compost material piled on top of it. And the fermentation composting process takes 30 days only. And it turns the entire body, including the bones, into dirt. And all of the material that person accumulated in the fermentation becomes inert. It turns it from harmful chemical garbage into inert matter through fermentation. And then they take the dirt and they fertilize the forest with it. And that's the proper way to deal with the human body that has passed away. The person dies, they lose their body, and that would eliminate that problem. Now, the other thing that they're talking about is how, CO2 emissions and climate change and all the stuff that they're hyping in the news. And they're saying, we got to go to battery powered cars. Well, that's really stupid, because a battery powered car wears a tire out almost twice as fast as a normal gasoline powered car. Why is that? Because they're heavier and they're more powerful. And they have a motor on each wheel, which makes those tires wear out twice as fast. It's ridiculous. And they're talking about CO2. That's not the problem. The problem is the nanoparticulates from the pollution of the brakes and the tires.
Right.
And
Well,
then,
not
and
to
then
mention, all the mining that is required for one EV vehicle. And I'm an EV vehicle driver, so but still, it's like, and I just read an article yesterday that there's literally not enough resources on this planet to support not only the creation of all these new electric vehicles, but to support their being, worked on and fixed over the years.
Right. Oh, no, this is a totally crashing thing. This is a slow motion train wreck that is so intense, it's going to completely take this world down. And if you don't know how to fix your human body, you are going to be taken out from that. They told us a few years ago that, all of a sudden there's this deadly thing in the air that's going to kill you, and you have to put a mask on, right? And everybody freaked out. The whole world put on a mask to protect themselves from the deadly thing in the air. But then they went, okay, well, actually, sorry, my dog is, I have two golden retrievers, and one of them is playing with the other one, and he's 10 years old, and he's as healthy as a horse. But anyway, he's making some noise over there. Hopefully that didn't come through. But he's growling at his girlfriend. So anyhow, it's like everything is a complete paradox. So everything we're told is true is not true in these areas, and everything we're told that is not true is true. And when you find it out yourself, when I simply did these things that supported my body's ability to produce clean blood all day, that I started doing 17 years ago, when I found out about the Oceans Alive and started consuming, I just wasn't consuming enough of it. I was consuming small amounts because everybody told me, well, you just need small amounts. You don't want to have too much because, there's lots of sodium in the sea minerals. So I was misinformed that whole time. Now I know the truth. And the only thing that you can do is to look at your physical body, because in the physical world, seeing is believing, and experience what I've now gone through and found out the truth. And it taught me all these things. The intelligence that came into my body by producing clean blood showed me so much that I can now look at it mathematically. And actually, the math works. So when I start telling people, like, I have small little 1 minute to 1.5 minute clips that are recorded when I talk about these things, and we publish them on Instagram and TikTok, which now have millions of views. The comments on some are like, oh wow, this is really cool. And other comments are like, you're dangerous. You're misinforming everybody. You're a dangerous person. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that's okay if you want to think I'm dangerous. I'm not, but this actually works. But people are so conditioned to think incorrectly that they don't take the right actions. And then the people who are like you and like me, who are now becoming early adopters and innovators, we know the truth, we do the right thing, and then we get the physical results that are undeniable.
Yeah, I mean, really, it just comes back to simple biology. Unfortunately, like you've said so many times, that we're conditioned and we're misinformed. Our body requires all these minerals as cofactors to normal bodily function. So that's one of the reasons why. I mean, we already know that almost everyone, at least in the United States anyway, is deficient in magnesium. But almost all of the magnesium out there to buy is hard for your body to absorb if you take it orally, right? I mean, that's why, the limiting factor to taking enough magnesium is actually loose stool and GI distress, we'll call it, because it'll just start being excreted. And if you take enough, and even in the, your stools will come out liquid as well, which might be a nice detox, but you're not absorbing that magnesium that you need. So I love that. I was just perusing your website before we hopped on this show today, and you have like the amount of products on your website and the research behind them really is, I think, so valuable. And if people are open and willing to at least trying and learning about everything that you've learned about, I think it really could have a massive impact. Like you said, we need iodine. I think iodine is one of the most demonized, if not salt. I think that'd be an interesting conversation, which is the most, iodine or salt.
Right.
But and even talking about, the thyroid issues in this country running rampant, starting happening earlier and earlier, and especially in females that have been on birth control for way too long at way too early of age. It's oftentimes an iodine deficiency, not a true problem with the organ, with the gland itself. So we only have a few minutes left. This has been fascinating, and I love our conversation. Can you talk a little bit specifically about iodine?
Yes. So yeah, iodine is the forgotten mineral, and people think it's for disinfecting cuts or using on the teats of a cow who is being milked. That's where iodine is used, and iodine is used in industry all over the world. But that one element is required in every cell of your body to function well. And we found out how to convert I2 molecular iodine molecule into a form of gas and infuse it into water, so that when you have just that pure I2 molecular iodine going into your system in a fluid, it fuels your body. Iodine is an actual fuel for every cell in your body. The thyroid can't use iodine. It uses iodide, which is another form of the iodine. When the iodine goes into your system, it reacts with things that you breathe, like the heavy metals and the fungus and various different problems that cause the body to malfunction. And when it reacts with it inside your body, it then converts into iodide, and your blood system picks it up and delivers that iodide to your thyroid. Your thyroid uses that as a fuel, and a healthy thyroid will convert that into T3, T4 iodine hormones that then empower your immune system and your brain function. So it is essential. You nailed it perfectly when you mentioned that all these remedies that are supposed to help with the thyroid that's not working right, that's not what the body needs. The thyroid would work perfectly if it was fueled right. And people get hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. And hyperthyroidism, people said, no, I can't even have any iodine at all. I can't eat anything with iodine in it. And that's just a massive, again, misinformation, because
Right, yeah.
it's the iodine deficiency is what's causing so many problems in the body. Endometriosis, fibroid cysts for women, all kinds of functionality issues with their cycle, and men with prostate. Prostate issues are another whole thing. That when you don't have the clean blood, your prostate plugs up if you're a male. And my prostate was plugged up and it enlarged. And by producing the clean blood, it took 3 months for my prostate symptoms to go away and have a properly functioning prostate, just by doing that one thing, and the iodine.
Yeah.
So the iodine we have.
Yeah. Sorry, keep going. I was just going to say that's one of the other things that Western medicine and your physician will tell you as a male. Well, it's pretty normal that your prostate will enlarge as you age. It's just a matter of, how much and how fast, and at what point we need to intervene. And it's like,
Right.
really? Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's you nailed it again, because that's exactly the PSA numbers. Like there's a book called the Great Prostate Hoax, and how the PSA numbers have destroyed manhood. There's a book on Amazon. People can buy it. And when I read that book, I'm like, yeah, of course. If you if your PSA numbers, they have nothing to do with it. But that's the weapon. It's weaponized against the male. And then they get the biopsies, which harms the prostate. You never want to have a biopsy. That'll do damage to it instantly. and it can metastasize if it has some kind of fungal growth in it. But anyway, let's get back to the iodine. So the iodine that we have is so unique because most iodine products in the market have every other thing with it. Like, the Lugol's iodine, which is better than nothing, but it's not the way to go because it's loaded with potassium iodide.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not in the right form. Your body wants pure iodine going in a very, very low dose, very high volume. So what we have is this USP grade, which means ultra purified iodine that is in ultra purified water as the base. And you just take the small amount per day and that fuels your entire body. So every day you just take a little bit, and when you go, you'll notice a big change in your brain function, and the body it also supports the body's ability to clean the blood even faster because it's going after those materials you've breathed and the funguses that, my tumor, what it turned out to be was a series of fungal infections that accumulated up with heavy metal poisoning. I had so much lead in my body because I worked in the oil field for 17 years. I worked in the field itself on the rigs for 17 years. And everything is lead pipe dope, they call it. And it goes on every thread of every connection. And we worked on wells up to 15,000 feet deep in the earth. And that means hundreds and literally thousands of connections that you're making in your lifetime working in that environment. And lead goes everywhere. It's like a lead paste that's required to put the joints together. So my body was full of lead. And how I survived that is remarkable. I had to do a 6-month lead detox, which worked extremely well. And all my lead poisoning symptoms went away. Whereas the doctor told me that I had some kind of a sexually related disease that was causing my shins to break out. But that was just lead. I didn't have any sexual disease whatsoever. I had a dermatologist literally tell me that's a sexually related thing. And I said, it can't be because I'm not involved in anything weird sexually. Yeah. And she told me, she goes, I'm your doctor. I'm a specialist. It took me six weeks to get an appointment with her. And that's all she had to tell me was that she'd give me some antibiotic to deal with the infection that she said was an infection in my legs. It was not an infection. It was lead coming out of the front of my shins because the gravitational pull brings it down. And so all these symptoms are misinterpreted. When I got rid of the lead by doing a very special detox that an herbalist told me about, it took 6 months and the symptoms were gone and they've never come back. And that was many years ago now. So, but anyway, so the iodine, all I tell everybody now is just a little bit every day. There's the RDAs are so tiny. The recommended daily allowances are so tiny. It's not enough. Again, that's misinformation. If you go to Japan, the RDA can be up to 10,000 micrograms a day, whereas the RDA in the United States and Canada is 150 versus 10,000.
Well, and also in Japan, like kelp is a normal part of their diet. And, if you were going to get iodine from a food source, kelp is one of the best places to do that from. So, it doesn't make any sense. So why would it be normal and okay for someone in Japan to be eating this amount and having this amount on a daily basis, and for someone in the United States to only be quote unquote allowed a fraction of that?
Right. A very minute fraction.
Yeah.
So, when I started taking the right amount of iodine, I noticed a significant uptick in my cognitive abilities. And that was back in 2019. And so it took us quite a while to get the production up properly so that we can, provide. Iodine's a very interesting thing to have to produce and package because it has to have special seals on the lid. And the seal holds it in so that if you leave the cap off the iodine bottle, it'll have just pure water in it after a couple of days. But you keep the lid on it. You keep the lid on it, lasts for years. But most people go through a bottle in a month. And you can also, iodine is fabulous for using externally. The body uses that as a raw material to heal the skin. So it helps the skin get youthful. And it also, if a person has a cut or a bruise or an abrasion, it speeds the healing because The body is the one that does the healing, not the iodine. But without the iodine, that raw material is missing for the body to produce nice, clean, beautiful skin.
So if people, because you made the statement earlier that almost all the detox mechanisms that we use pretty much don't do anything for us because we're not supporting ourselves with these other minerals. So could one make the argument that if we're doing both, then maybe we have a chance to get through this toxic environment soup that we live in a little bit better off?
Oh yeah, like the normal detox that everyone knows about that I had done all of them. They are helpful, but that you're kind of fighting a losing battle if you don't have the clean blood production every day. So when you do the clean blood production and you do the detoxes, it speeds it up even more. So I'm all for all kinds of detox, so long as it's not harsh. Like I did EDTA, like intravenous chelations and different things. I found those to be harsh, but they're better than nothing if people don't know about the clean blood production. But so all those harsh ones are no longer required. The body can detox very efficiently. Yeah,
exactly.
On its own,
yeah, especially when it's given the tools. So like our body wants to be in a state of homeostasis. Our body wants to constantly be making new, fresh, clean cells and keep it that way. But like you said, we're so bombarded day in and day out that eventually our body just can't keep up. So detoxing, yes, necessary, but also the tools, the minerals, the food. So tell everyone, your store, your company is called Activation Products. Is there anything specifically from there that you want to bring to the forefront before we finish up?
Yes, there's a couple more things. You mentioned the magnesium, which is extracted from the ocean, and there's only one company in Europe that produces the raw materials that are required as magnesium chloride hexahydrate, and it's hydrophilic, which is a bit of a scientific term, but it takes 12 hours to make the product, and everyone notices that when they use our Ease product on the skin, which it goes in transdermally, it works immediately. It's very comfortable, it's smooth, there's no itchiness. It just goes in and you feel it within 90 seconds. It allows you to have deeper sleeps. It also gives you the magnesium, because magnesium is another element that is the fuel that you use all day. The more brain power you use, the more magnesium you're burning. The more stress you're under, the more magnesium you burn. So it supports the autonomic nervous system to be able to flip into parasympathetic and rest and digest very quickly. And it also keeps you, when you're in your sympathetic stress, getting things done, you get in there well and you pop back into parasympathetic right away. So that's a major master mineral, it's called. And it does not tax the digestive tract at all, because it goes geographically right where you put it. And you do 30 sprays, definitely once a day before you go to bed, and preferably twice a day. When you wake up in the morning, it gives you calm, solid energy during the day, and it gives you deep rest at night, because your muscles relax when you put magnesium into them. And people get overcalcified, which makes their muscles contract. And it also helps your joints run much smoother, because joints get calcified over time when people are magnesium deficient. So that's another must have. And like there's categories of must have and there's categories of like to have, want to have. So the iodine and the magnesium are absolutely must have. The sea minerals are an absolute total must have. And then there's one more thing that speeds up detox. And that's a product we have called Solaris. Solaris is a phenomenal, powerful thing. And these things are all super affordable. Everything we're talking about today is not expensive, because what happens is when you do these things, you don't have to do a whole lot of other things that people spend money on because they didn't have the knowledge. The Solaris is made of clove, rosemary, and thyme, and it's the extract of the entire plant. So I've always recommended, if people are taking the iodine, they take their dose of iodine today, wait 30 minutes and take Solaris. And the Solaris is a cleanup operation. The clove, rosemary, and thyme and the formula that it's in is super concentrated. It goes in and cleans up the mess, but it converts the harmful materials in your body into inert matter, and then you eliminate them safely. And it can also be used topically, and it also works with dental. So if a person uses the Solaris on their toothbrush, just one drop in their toothbrush, along with their toothpaste, whatever they're using, it is a phenomenally beautiful thing for having clean, nice teeth, getting rid of all the gum issues because it goes after the bacteria in the mouth that is harmful, that causes plaque. And people have testified many times that when they started using it, they never had to get their teeth cleaned again. And they didn't have any more cavities.
Great, fantastic. So also too, I just noticed that first-time subscribers also get 15% off of the site. So I think that's maybe even a little more of an incentive if all of the amazing things we've talked about today haven't convinced you yet. And I just want to come back to one more thing about the magnesium. When you mentioned the word hydrophilic, so that means that it requires it has to go through that lipid membrane of your cell to get into the cell. And hydrophilic means that it will do that. So that's really important because, you know, the reason so much of our vasculature and our joints get calcified, besides being magnesium deficient, is also if you're one of those people out there taking a calcium supplement that, number one, you don't need, and number two, is not getting absorbed. It's just circulating through your bloodstream, hardening your vasculature, and settling as deposits in places like your joints. And that is an example of not being hydrophilic because it's not going into the cell. So any nutrient that our body is going to use has to be able to get into the cell. So it either has to be hydrophilic in and of itself, or it has to have a carrier that is to take it in. So I think that's just, I always like to give some background to help people have a little bit deeper understanding of their own beautiful bodies. So anyway, thank you, Ian, so much for being here today. I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing, continue to do your journey. You know, I often say, like, you know, our journeys teach us so much. And so it's a way to, even if it's been painful in the past, grateful that we went through it because, you know, we're in a better place now, hopefully. So thank you, thank you,
Yes.
thank you. Anything else before we finish up today?
One last thing is I recommend everyone to work on things that improve your joy and your enthusiasm. Joy and enthusiasm go hand in hand. And when you have enthusiasm, regardless of whatever is going on around you, and you're thinking about how amazing your body is and how wonderful you as a person are, and you have hyper intelligence, we're told that we have 10% use of our brain. That is one of the biggest lies that was ever told. We have 100% use of our brain. And speak about yourself truthfully in a really positive manner. Always reject anything that is predicting failure for yourself, and remember that you're a totally successful being. You're just now going to tap into all the things that are going to bring enthusiasm and joy and enthusiasm for life. And let's keep our bodies healthy and keep alive. You know, care enough to keep your body alive.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. This has been a real pleasure. I feel like we could probably keep talking for another hour about so many things. So anyway, so there will be a link to the shop, the company Activation Products. And so you can go on there, peruse it, check it out. There's a lot of information in addition to the products themselves. Again, that's 15% off for first-time subscribers. And that discount code pops up when you sign up. And yes, we are so grateful for people like you doing this work and bringing us things that'll actually help us heal and stay alive longer and be happier and healthier along the way. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lara.